Hello and welcome into the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here shortly after day one of the MLB Draft has come to a close. The Toronto Blue Jays adding prep shortstop JoJo Parker with their first pick, the 8th overall selection in this year's draft. Kind of a oddly unfolding first round, but ultimately, the Blue Jays pick comes up and it's kind of in the exact position that we expected, where it was, Jamie Arnold, Kyson Witherspoon, JoJo Parker, Billy Carlson, those types in the mix. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin Shecter. And Jori, how are we feeling about JoJo Parker?
Yeah, so here's kind of my thought. Let's get this right off the hop. It's hard to mess up the eighth overall pick, and the Blue Jays certainly didn't do that. You could go full Heston Kjerstad second overall, or you could go after Ike Irish in the first round when nobody feels like he. Well, I guess some people by the end of things thought he was a talented player, but certainly not a upper echelon talent. I digress. It's hard to mess up the eighth overall pick. There were a couple very talented guys, especially after things went kind of nutty right off the top. Obviously, we're all expecting Kate Anderson. We're all expecting Ethan Holiday, and that, of course, is not what unfolds. And so the Blue Jays, as the dominoes fall, ultimately get their chance at basically their pick of the litter. Now, I was pro lefty, and obviously Doyle's off the board, so you're looking at ideally
It was Jamie Arnold. He was the guy.
like
We spent a
Arnold
lot of
or
time in the draft preview talking about Jamie Arnold, and he was there. We can say that. What's it's funny about it though, because obviously Arnold's there, and the tweet gets sent out for people who are tweeting the results of the draft, and we get a little DeMar DeRozan pump fake that the Blue Jays are in fact taking Jamie Arnold, and then you get the follow-up tweet, actually never hold that thought, and it ends up being JoJo Parker. So obviously JoJo Parker, win of a pick, like really exciting. It's just kind of funny the way that we got there, especially when we did spend so much time talking about Arnold, and it seemed to be Arnold for a second, and then it ends up being Parker ultimately when the Jays actually do make the announcement themselves.
And let me be entirely clear that I like this Parker pick for what it's worth. You look at like Riley Delaney of Blue Jays Nation over on Twitter, big fan of the pick, and she was really pushing for it. And to see the name come across, obviously there's some familiarity, and of course, obviously, you're prepping for the draft. You're kind of studying up on who might be available, and Parker's obviously one of the names that is expected to be there. The hit tool seems like it's good in terms of the timeline. I think it was about, I want to say like 9, 10 months younger than Trey Yasat, or excuse me, than Arjun Amala. Sorry, can you tell it's a late night episode? Um, no, but I think really like they did well with the pick. They did what they had to do. They went out there and they very clearly identified a guy that they liked. I think that the number that got thrown out by Shai Davidi after the draft, 14 guys within the Blue Jays organization kind
Yeah,
of had their eyes on him,
yeah,
which by all accounts is a large number of people to basically say, hey, this guy's got the goods.
yeah.
But even if he doesn't stick it short, you've got all these other guys that are capable. And as a prep shortstop, he's going to take some time to get there. Obviously, he's presumably going to be starting in probably, I'd guess, rookie ball or
Well,
maybe
that's
even just a
that's
complex. Like he's an age
Yeah.
away.
That's one of the cool things about like drafting a hitter is that we're going to get to see him this season, right? Eventually, it will probably get like 20 games or so of JoJo Parker in the FCL. So we won't actually get to see him, but we'll get to see the results. And one of the things that Mark Tremuta did say in his post draft pick avail was that the Blue Jays, one thing that like they did factor in was that they think he's ready for single A, for Dunedin, for to kind of be thrown into the minor league ranks like that. And I don't think that he's going to be playing at Dunedin this season. It's probably he opens up there next year. But when you think to like the Arjun Nimala pick a couple years ago, right, where Nimala of course gets the single A assignment in his first full season of pro ball, and he struggles out of the gate, right? So I think that they probably don't say that lightly that they're, ready to send him there. So I think that's really interesting. I think as far as like the pick goes, right? Like this is a guy who seemingly has one of the best hit tools in the class. You mentioned probably maybe doesn't stick at shortstop long term, but ultimately it's the bat that's the carrying tool. This is a guy, he was the Mississippi Gatorade baseball player of the year in his state. He hit 489, 13 home runs. Kind of seems like the profile is going to be a guy who can hit and a guy who has the power potential to be like maybe a 25 home run guy. I know Baseball Prospectus compared him to like a Daniel Murphy, which, if you're able to be Daniel Murphy for longer than Daniel Murphy was Daniel Murphy, like that's a win of a pick, right? And of course, that is still 3-4 years away at this point. But I think for the potential of getting an impact bat like that on the infield is pretty exciting.
Yeah, and Daniel Murphy is maybe not the sexiest comp, but if you want one of those sexy comps, look no further than Kylie McDaniel, I believe it was, certainly ESPN, who tossed out a less athletic Gunnar Henderson or
Yeah,
a less pudgy Rafael Devers.
did you see
So
the side by side that I wish I knew who it was who posted it, but the side by side of Parker's swing and Gunnar Henderson's?
I didn't catch that, but
No.
you can definitely kind of sense
Yeah.
the left-handed stroke, it's hard to have an ugly looking left-handed stroke, but the clips we did see obviously right out of the draft, this guy looks like he can swing it. And obviously I do think that, he's not a huge frame. He's gonna have to grow into his frame. So as far as something like, being a huge potential power threat goes, maybe that's not necessarily in the cards, but I do feel like there's enough to really kind of, dream on. The way we kind of looked at it was you're kind of getting the best of both worlds, whereas, you look at maybe some of the other shortstops that went, you look at like an Ava Arquette or a
Yeah.
Billy Carlson right around him, maybe one's more of a hitter, maybe one's more of a fielder, right? So you're really kind of getting the best of everything. And that's the sense that you certainly get based on the way the Jays are talking about the pick. Just in terms of, they felt that this was a guy that was the best available player at that spot.
Yeah, I just found it here. It was Adam Heisler that kind of sent to that video. So if you're on Twitter, go look it up. It's a pretty comparable swing to Gunners, and that's not a bad guy to look like in the box. So pretty exciting there. I think obviously as the draft unfolds, of course Willits goes one. I think we kind of scratched Willits as a potential candidate for the Jays, even though like early on it was maybe a possibility, and then of course he goes one. Tyler Bremner goes two, and that's just kind of where things,
Well, some CanCon
go
there,
up
and
into the
we
air.
we had
Yeah,
mentioned him as a name that maybe the Jays would be in the mix for, but
as like an
it
underslot
felt
deal,
like,
but
yeah, but never mind an underslot deal. I think we even were like it would probably be the Jays reaching for him. Needless to say, not the case.
yeah, he was not even available for them. So very interesting. Obviously the Angels there. We talked about it. Guy, he has Canadian parents, said that he wants to play for Canada at the World Baseball Classic. We can get into a couple of the other Canadians, I think, in a bit, but still to kind of stick with a little bit more on Parker. Like, I mean, as the draft board unfolded, I know we both said in the last episode that the Jays were going to take Parker. What was kind of your sense as it unfolded? Like, were you sitting there, just in total shock, like kind of unsure what to do, or as it unfolded, were you kind of like, yeah, this is kind of the spot where we wanted them to be in, or we thought that they were going to be?
Yeah, no, it's probably a bit of both, I think right off the top, obviously, it's the shock basically was felt
Yeah,
across the baseball world. Everyone was surprised. I mean, seemed like Kate Anderson or Ethan Holiday was, upwards of probably an 80% chance. I mean, uh, I look at, I was watching MLB Network, of course, ESPN also covers the draft, and they put out this pie chart and they had a 50%
yeah, yeah.
chance
It was,
of Anderson going one, and Holiday was about a 30% chance. And of
yeah,
course, that's not the way things ultimately unfold. So I think the surprise of those first two picks certainly was a big part of how things went. And I even sent a message to you, right? I'm like, the Jays are going to get a chance to pick basically their guy. And of course,
yeah.
3 and 4, and the draft continues, and it maybe goes a little bit more according to the script. Uh, the one thing I'll say is this. I won't pretend to be a draft expert. I think in a lot of respects, you're probably even more tuned in than maybe I
It's,
am. But I
I mean, it's
I
it's
just
it's a
think
crapshoot for anybody, realistically.
it's a crapshoot. B, I just I wonder for the Jays as an organization, and you don't really want to draft for a position, but I do wonder if or maybe the word is I wonder why there was maybe a reluctance to go out there and pick Arnold because to me he would have provided a different look than the guys they already have in the system. I mean, another big day for Blue Jays prospects, of course, today. Cal Stevens, of course,
Yeah.
leads headlines and he gets the call to Double A, which is well deserved. And the question for me is why not add to that stable, especially when it's kind of like you can never have too many pitchers. And
Well, especially
I
you
don't want to
figure like
seem
one of those guys is going to be on the move soon.
exactly like I don't want to seem negative because I do feel like this is a good pick. Like there's no questioning that they got a really substantial player and there's a decent chance Parker ends up their number one prospect within 12 months. I mean, he'll probably slot into the top 100. One would maybe figure on something like MLB Pipeline,
I'm
maybe at the back end. Like,
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I do actually have the article pulled up from Baseball America right now, which is where will the top 25 or 2025 MLB draft picks rank as top 100 prospects? And it says JoJo Parker is one of the ones that is going to be on or is likely to be on the top 100 right away, right? So that puts him, in the Trey Savage. You figure he'll probably be ahead of Ricky Tiedemann. Ricky Tiedemann probably gets bumped off with the draft, unfortunately, but it puts him in the group with like a Trey Savage. Namala, of course, is a little bit higher on the list on those types of lists, but yeah, no, I think it's a guy who you instantly put at the top of your system, right? And we kind of knew that was going to be the case with the eighth overall pick. And I think no matter who you wanted to take, I think they probably would have all gone into the top 100, whoever the Blue Jays were planning on taking, or were whoever they did end up taking, unless they completely reached off the board. But I think
well,
yeah, go
it's
ahead.
almost ironic that the pitcher here is somehow the safer pick, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
it's just
yeah,
and obviously that's not necessarily the case, but it feels like my preference with the draft is I'd rather take a guy that's knocking on the door rather than a prep or a younger guy. Obviously, Seth Hernandez notwithstanding, most high school guys, you're talking about a long-term timeline. I mean, even you look at Brandon Barriera is a good example. Obviously slowed by injuries, but even he probably isn't slowed by injuries. He's probably behind Drea Savage on the development curve, even with his health in tow. So to me, I wonder if this is a case where the Jays are swinging, or I just it seems like there's maybe some machinations here that we're obviously not going to be privy to. But I wonder what maybe their internal grading system is and how positionality maybe impacts it. Because we'd heard from the Jays, we've heard from Mark Shmuda that there's a certain level of risk inherent to pitchers. And is this just a case of him just wanting to avoid pitchers? Is this him not liking Arnold? Or it just, again, it feels like there's a lot of machinations here that are beyond
it's
our purview.
It's funny because he actually maybe tipped his hand a little bit in that pre-draft conversation, right? Where he was like, yeah, we like the up the middle athlete type or whatever. And he's like, my history with drafting and pitchers in the first round has been traditionally right-handed. So maybe he was kind of, suggesting that it was going to be one of these prep shortstops. I know in Shai's article, he mentioned that the Jays were interested in Liam Doyle if he made it to them. So maybe Doyle was the one guy that they would have gone with, but it seems like maybe Parker was kind of the guy that they had
Which is
locked
ironic
into.
because a lot of people had Arnold ahead of Doyle, I feel like. Obviously, Doyle had some helium towards the
Yeah,
end, but I mean, I think even like Pipeline had Arnold ahead of Doyle. Like, I don't know. It
yeah,
just feels like there's a lot of information we don't have right now, which is how it works with the MLB
probably
draft,
never will
especially when you're
have.
picking a high schooler. Probably
Yes,
never will have, and if we do get it, it might come in 3-4 years time, right?
yeah,
It's hard to project out. There's a reason. MLB draft is probably the most unique draft of any of the major four
yeah.
sports just because of how far out these guys are from being big league contributors. And even though the pick itself, again, this isn't to disparage JoJo Parker. Like this is a good pick,
Yeah.
solid B plus, solid, solid maybe A minus even. Just not my guy personally. Just not the guy that I had really eyed up. Not the guy that I was hoping the Jays would take. And because Arnold was on the board, that's why I feel like that opportunity is maybe a missed opportunity.
Yeah, personally, I know like obviously love Arnold, but I love a hitter. Obviously pitchers are great and everything. I think hitting development is really fun and interesting to watch. Albeit, a little bit more difficult to track than pitching development for sure. I do kind of want to give some shine to like Parker off the field as well. Really interesting story. Of course, his twin brother Jacob, who maybe as a Blue Jay. He's was a member of the Purvis High School team alongside JoJo, and is an outfielder who is going to get drafted tomorrow. And is he going to be a Blue Jay? Would be pretty fun. Obviously, if the Blue Jays sent 14 people to see JoJo, then those 14 people likely also saw Jacob. So maybe we'll see a twin killing, a twin billing, if you will, get
A
added to the
twin
Jays
billing. I like that. I
get
like
added
that.
to the Jays system tomorrow. They would be, I think it's the second set of twins. Obviously, the Witherspoons are in this group as well, but they're trying to become the second set of twins to be drafted in the same draft class to make it to the majors. So, interesting storyline there. And then, of course, their dad as well, who was paralyzed in high school from a football injury, and then they talked a lot about him and kind of the inspiration that he was for them growing up, and really cool story there. And it'll be great to get to know JoJo going forward. I think Ben Nicholson Smith tweeted out that high character grade as well, which coming from the Blue Jays, not all that shocking.
Yeah, the Blue Jays seem to target those types of guys for sure. Maybe a certain organization in this draft that maybe didn't do their research. Not the Blue Jays, but maybe a division
Well,
rival. But we'll maybe get into that.
let's Little Slay. I mean, come on, we'll get into Little Slay, but before we kind of slide over onto the Canadian track side of things, the Blue Jays made two picks. They also picked in the third round. Obviously, lost their second round pick because of the Anthony Santander qualifying offer signing, and with their third round pick, they go with outfielder Jake Cook, who is raw uh, outfielder from Southern Mississippi who just converted to being an outfielder full time. He was, recruited as a two-way and had his fastball, I guess, like up to 96. So if he doesn't work out as an outfielder, perhaps there's a fallback option there for him.
Um, Happy birthday to him, by the way. Turned 22. Very interesting to hear a 22-year-old be described as raw, but certainly fits the bill. The 80 grade run is
Yeah,
tantalizing. Toolsed up is maybe the word, although toolsed up would imply some
saw
power.
without the power.
And
Yeah,
yeah, that seems to be lacking. But it does sound like this guy's going to be a legit center fielder potentially.
yeah.
Needs to figure out how to steal bases.
Yes,
But
he
would be
went
really
three
fun.
for 3 for 8 with 80 grade speed on the stolen
Yeah,
base range,
which is a
confounding.
little peculiar to say the least.
Yes.
But the thing that obviously is super intriguing to me and really fits the Blue Jays bill, and I tweeted it out, 7% K rate
Yeah.
is fascinating to say the least. This is a bat to ball guy
Yeah.
on a team that loves bat to ball guys. You want to talk about a guy that could fast track to the big leagues. Um, Cook seems like he could be in the big leagues soon in relative terms, given his age and given his toolkit. He's obviously got to figure out how to hit. Um, but if he's going to avoid striking out at that kind of clip, I mean, you know, welcome back, Ernie Clement, as they say.
Yeah, at Southern Mississippi, he walked more than he struck out, like you mentioned. He hit 350, 436 OBP, but a 468 slug, only three home runs. A handful of doubles and a few triples in there, of course, with the speed. The bat to ball is really what drives the offensive profile. Baseball America had him listed as a draft prospect to watch in later rounds, one of their sleepers. And in there, they mentioned that he has a contact rate of 90%, and that's 95% on fastballs. So obviously, just a guy who it doesn't swing and miss at all, which kind of fits in here. I think it's interesting because The pitching thing intrigues me a little bit because he's a guy who's been up to 96. So to me, that screams that there definitely is a lot more power in there, right? Because he's kind of got the rotational energy to throw 96. So there should be some rotational energy to, hit for a little bit more power. And
So
obviously,
you think it's maybe like an attack angle thing, you
I
think?
think there's probably just a little bit of a unlocking his swing, like unlocking the lower half a little bit, so that he, rotates a little bit quicker. I know you kind of watch some Twitter videos and whatever, and the swing does look pretty raw. So I bet you that they do have kind of some plans and feel like they can get more out of him. I think guy, sometimes, you call like pitcher power for hitters and it's just all based on the rotation. So maybe he can kind of tap into that a little bit. He's like 6'3" and 185 pounds. So
He's a
there's
twig.
some room in there
He's lengthy.
to
There's
to
room to
to
grow.
grow. Yeah. But yeah, no, I think the defense is super interesting. Is this kind of the next Desan Brown coming up through the system? You get this glove. He's a lefty fielder. Obviously is going to have a good arm because of the pitching experience. So, don't have a ton to say about Jake Cook. It's an interesting profile to take in the third round with your second pick. I think, there's so many ways that you can go, but obviously there's something that they see in there, and I would imagine that they think that they can get some more power out of him.
Yeah, something I wonder about because you mentioned the contact rate. No disrespect to Ernie Clement, but that's maybe not the sexiest comp. But Jacob Wilson went seventh overall and has that profile. You're laughing at me like that's a
Wow.
ridiculous comp, but I mean, like, you think that's the dream scenario?
I would imagine that like a player like that for sure. Even I'm not like super in love with Jacob Wilson. Just the exit velocities aren't quite there, but he's been super good, right? So I think that would be if he turns into that offensively, or even like 60% of that with what he brings defensively. This is going to be a star. Well, not a star, but a really good big leaguer. Like
I don't
like
know.
uh
This
like
is a
reverse. You take Dalton Varsho and you take his power and you turn it into contact, and you take his contact and turn it into power, and you get hopefully what Jake Cook becomes.
yeah. All of a sudden, it makes a lot of sense what the Blue Jays are targeting.
Your platoon, but it's just contact and power in the outfield, except for they both hit left-handed.
Oh, brother.
All right, let's move on to the Canadian aspect of the first round because a handful of them went. Obviously, we already touched on Bremner. Really cool story. Hopefully, we see him pitching for Canada at a World Baseball Classic. I doubt it'll be next year's World Baseball Classic because he's going to be getting ready to pitch in the Angels rotation at that time. So not expecting that. And obviously for like Canadian born players, there was only two, but there was like the five of them who have Canadian ties. We can kind of go one by one. Bremner was first. He went second overall, and then Slater DeBrun or Little Slay, as we mentioned, who went 37th to the Orioles. His mom worked in Toronto for a long time, and he has a Canadian passport, so. Very, very interesting. A fun prospect. I kind of mentioned like Dante Nori, but with a little more power, and I think that's pretty accurate. A speedster from Oregon and a guy who's going to stick in the outfield. And also a aspiring music producer, of course, by the nickname Lil Slay. And I teased this to you in the group chat because you would assume Lil Slay is involved in rap, right?
Okay, so this guy's from Oregon.
Yeah,
I think he's also got some roots in like New Zealand or something, if I recall this correctly, or maybe that's
that's
another
that's Micah
Canadian kid.
Bucknam.
Okay, so I'm jumping ahead, but needless to say, this kid's definitely been here, there, and everywhere. But the Oregon thing, is it like country? Like,
It
what is this guy
it
working
sure
with?
is country.
A country artist named Lil Slay. That's a new one. That's not
Hey, good
something
for
that
him. Congrats on being drafted. Um, yeah, he'll
if
be
this
an
guy
interesting name to watch.
if they bring back if they bring back the players' weekend uniforms, this guy's
Little
jersey is gonna
Slay.
go
Yeah.
platinum.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he goes to the Orioles. Not a ton to say. seems like he'll fit in pretty well in their system. So next up was a Canadian-born outfielder. We talked about Charles Davalon a couple times on this pod. He's like my new Eddie Julian, but of course college ranks coming up here. Goes to the Dodgers. Not really a Dodgers profile, you kind of think of the Dodgers and like kind of gaudy exit velos, and Devlin like still he hits the ball hard. Like I know he's hit a couple balls over 110, so good plate approach, good bat to ball, kind of the potential for a little bit more power in there. Not necessarily, yeah, like I said, not quite a Dodgers profile, but fun that he goes there, I think.
Yeah, I think that generally speaking, the Dodgers also obviously seem to get a lot of other guys. So the fit there should be fun. The fit there should be good.
Yes. And then the next Canadian tie pick was Cam Leiter, of course, the nephew of Al Leiter, noted Toronto Blue Jays World Series team member. And, it was funny because I saw some people that wanted him to go to the Jays in the third round, but, Leiter, like big stuff. If he didn't have to undergo shoulder surgery and miss all of 2020, I would imagine he might have been a first
Well, he
rounder.
he had been linked in a lot of respects, kind of as a first round, maybe coming into the year. So that's certainly a pick with some upside to tap into for sure.
Yeah, he'll be worth watching. I would imagine the Dodgers are going to work some magic with him. And then the final guy who went, another Canadian Cleveland Guardian, Will Hines, a high schooler from Toronto. We've seen him pitch at the Canadian Future Showcase. He's, was a regular there over the past couple of years. A regular on the junior national team, right-hander who's kind of been on this track for a while. He's committed to Wake Forest, which is of course a pitching factory, and he lands with Cleveland, and I think that's going to be a really, really good spot for him. You kind of think, oh, this guy's going to want to go to Wake Forest because they develop pitchers really well. Well, he lands with Cleveland, and who else develops pitchers really well? It's the Cleveland Guardians.
It's really the Wake Forest of Major League Baseball. I've been saying it, they've been
That's
saying it.
that's what the people have been saying. Wake Forest and Cleveland are
Yeah, I
on
mean,
the
listen,
same.
it's a good choice from either way, and it's good for a Canadian product too, because certainly couldn't hurt the WBC squad in the years to come.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting to get this many on day one. I think last year there was only a couple guys on that we talked about, so really cool to have this many guys to talk about. I'm sure we'll, have many more to talk about in the days ahead, and obviously rounds 4 through 20 go tomorrow, so that's going to be a long day as people get geared up for the home run derby with about I think it's like 400 maybe 500 more picks.
Something like that. Yeah, well, it's about a 600 player draft, and about
Yeah.
what, a couple hundred go today.
I think 105
Uh,
today, so
so get locked in. I think it's at 11 o'clock, 11 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow.
11:30 gets
11:30
underway.
Eastern.
So,
Bright and early.
yep,
So
get up, get your coffee and
yeah, finish
turn
this
on turn
podcast and go flip on MLB Network.
turn on the draft stream. It'll be exciting. Always good to kind of see where guys land. So, before we get out of here, you got any other JoJo Parker Blue Jays draft, Canadian draft, um any other thoughts on this class and what's going to come ahead here, or Jake Cook, of course, as well.
Well, of course, all love to Jake Cook. We love an 80
Happy
grade
birthday.
happy birthday. We love an 80 grade happy birthday. And
That, you know what? Honestly, it was an 80 grade happy birthday for him. Getting drafted, I can't think of a better way to celebrate.
that's probably a pretty good way to celebrate. And I'm ready for the JoJo show.
The JoJo show in no, I don't got it. I don't have anything else
TOTO.
in TOTO. All right, that is definitely the sign that it's time for us to go. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. You can find us there at the Bird's Eye View Podcast. If you're listening along on the podcast provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jori is at J Negin Shecter, and the pod is at BEV_pod. Thanks so much for listening.